Welcome to Entry Point Faith, where every week we discover fresh meaning in the world so you can find faith your way. And please welcome your guest speaker for today, Steve Ehrlich.
My dad, Max Ehrlich, died on March 26th with my siblings and I gathered around him. I was holding his hand when he took his last breath. His death marked the end of a 35-year battle with coronary artery disease and the conclusion of a 7-week hospice journey. This is my first Father's Day without him. I'm eternally grateful to be my father's son. I'm not here to preach at you today, just to reflect a little on the man who brought me into this world, his life, his final weeks, and his faith. I hope that there's some small nugget in what I'm about to share that sticks with you and inspires you. When I think about what my dad meant to me, this Bible verse is right on point. Listen, my children, to a parent's lesson. Listen and gain insight. I offer you sound teaching. Don't squander it. My dad offered me sound teaching, something for which I'm incredibly grateful. People we love die. It's how life works. You know it's coming, but most of the time you don't know exactly how, who, or when. When people would ask me how my dad was doing the past couple of years, I would say, he's circling the airport waiting for clearance to land. You see, he had a heart attack in November of 2019, and my mom died 2 months later. Her death was emotionally painful for all of us, and it took its toll on him. This is one of my favorite recent pictures of my dad and me. My dad lived a pretty selfless life, preferring to do for others whatever he could, seldom asking for help. The one area of his life where he knew he needed help was his heart disease. He knew he needed medical assistance to keep going, and keep going he did. He had a triple bypass, 37 stents, and countless procedures over his last 35 years. God and modern medicine gave him a long, productive, and independent life. In my dad's flight from birth to death, on February 4th, he was cleared for landing. He had another heart attack. Thankfully, when my sister went to see him the next morning, he was still alive, but it was clear that this angina pain was like no other he'd ever experienced. On a scale of 1 to 10, he said it was a 10. The cardiologist in the ICU explained to my dad the risks of another angiogram for an 88-year-old in his condition. And my dad chose hospice. Some might say he was lucky to survive, but honestly, my family and I considered ourselves the lucky ones because it gave us an invaluable overtime period with him. I have 5 siblings, and at least one of us was always with him after he left the hospital. As my brother said, it was a privilege. For all of us, it was a gift. We got 7 extra weeks with him, and lucky for us, it was his heart that was failing him, not his mind. During that time, we learned details about his life that we had never otherwise heard. One thing he told me in early February was that 5 years before, he had made a promise to Mary, Jesus' mother, that he would pray the rosary every day. And he did his best to keep that commitment until the very end. Even during his weeks in hospice, he sat on the edge of his hospital bed every night and prayed the rosary before turning in. Amazingly, his faith was never broken by the suffering his slowly degrading heart put him through over the years. My dad came home from the hospital more talkative than any of us could remember. He relished in holding court from his recliner, telling us things that he had not shared before. He was generally a quiet person and one who valued action over words. He knew what he thought it meant to be a good person, a good Catholic, and that was how he lived. During his time in hospice, my dad's early life came alive for us through his stories. He was born into an immigrant family, baptized a Roman Catholic, and grew up while our country was at war with his parents' country of origin. His parents knew the ways of their homeland, and they brought up my dad and his older brother Paul in their German culture, adapting as needed to life in their adopted country. They spoke German at home until Paul went to school in the first grade and the teacher couldn't understand what he was saying. They spoke English from then on. And during the war, my grandfather was harassed to the point that he had to quit his job. Life wasn't easy. I never really thought about the struggles they must have had, and it gave me real empathy for immigrants, why they come to America, and the difficulties they face once they're here. Above all else, my dad was a Catholic. He knew how his faith told him to live, and he wanted us to live that way. It was his priority that we all attend Catholic school, so we all went through 12 years of Catholic education. It wasn't always easy for my parents to make ends meet, with 6 kids going to private school, but they saved and they sacrificed to make it happen. And through my dad's example, he taught us all how to be good sons and daughters, responsible and loving parents, and honest, hardworking, faithful, and caring people. His life of service to his church, his community, his friends, and his family taught us what is truly meant by giving back. My dad loved his church, St. Bernadette in Rockford, Illinois. In fact, following his retirement, volunteering at church became his new full-time job, helping out with everything from counting the weekly offering to keeping the grounds. And he served others through his actions and his finances. In fact, as one of his final acts, 3 days before he died, my dad wrote out 7 checks to his church and to other various charities. He truly gave until he was no longer able to give. His faith was steadfast. It never wavered. He took his 35 years of increasing and decreasing angina pain in stride. And he never questioned why he had to deal with it. He would just sometimes say that God must know what he's doing. Even in hospice, he didn't blame God for his suffering. He never questioned God's existence. He just kept on praying. He kept his promise to Mary every single day. Interestingly, his hospice journey made me question my own faith. I looked at my dad and how committed he was to doing the right thing, to living his faith, and to being the person that he thought God wanted him to be. His time in hospice care might have given us the gift of an overtime period with him, but he suffered greatly. Just getting out of bed made his angina pain shoot up. I could see it on his face and in his movements. He resisted taking the morphine most of the 7 weeks because he wanted to be present with a clear head. Honestly, I often wondered why God was keeping him alive. Why did his journey have to be so painful? It wasn't just seeing my dad suffer that shook my faith. The war in Ukraine broke out in the middle of my dad's time in hospice, and I could only find one word: why? And the weeks since he died have been no better, with mass killings of African American grocery shoppers and elementary school children and hospital workers and on and on. I find myself asking, if God is love, what is the point of evil, hatred, and suffering? Why does God allow so many lives to be cut short? Why do tyrants get to assert their will and destroy other people's lives in the process? I'm in a place where I'm not sure what I believe about God or how to even talk to him. In my heart, I know that God exists. I'm just questioning the nature of God. It's quite a contrast with how my dad's plane finally came in for a landing. His steadfast faith versus my endless questions. I guess I'll just close by saying, wherever you are in your faith journey, only one thing is certain. We're born, we live, and we die. We need to make the most of our time between birth and death because we don't know when our planes will come in for a landing. We need to act on our beliefs and our values, not just talk about them. Most of us won't get an overtime period with the people we love, so we must be deliberate about what we do, how we treat others, and to what causes we give our time and other resources. Every single day. My dad had a long life and he lived his faith until the very end. While he wasn't perfect, his example has given me a lot to strive for in my life. I am grateful for him. And I miss him. Especially today as I'm celebrating my father's. Thank you for listening. Hopefully there was something in what I shared that you found interesting or inspirational. You would like that. If you can hear me, Dad, happy Father's Day.
Thanks for joining us this week on Entry Point Faith. The Entry Point Faith community meets every other Sunday at Connor Prairie in Fishers, Indiana. For more information or to join in person, visit entrypointonline.org. Entry Point Faith is a part of the Switchpoint Media Network. Find a variety of podcasts by visiting switchpoint.media.